On this episode of One Man, One Hand, and No Real Plan, we start out working on a door gap and end up making 2 new rear cab mounts. So, before I got to the actual panel gaps or the edge gaps, I needed to put the skin back on. And what's interesting is now that we fixed that door, I have to really make some adjustments on how we had originally put the door skin on. I'm gonna have to figure out if I need to buy a whole new skin or if I can pry everything back out and reinstall it. So that'll be fun. On the back side of the door, you can see it's much tighter all along in there, and so I just need to fold this over tighter and it should line up. Wrong door. We got the skin back on this, and I've got them lined up a lot better. I'll show you here in a second. I don't have it fully welded across here, just have it in place enough to be able to figure out gaps and stuff. I want to see how it fits before I weld it all across there again. Now it can't fall, at least. So you can see, now that we fixed everything, this gap is wider at the bottom than at the top. We need this to come back just a smidge on the bottom. On the back, we've got a hell of a mess going on here. First, you can see how wide this is here. This is where we want to, at the top is where we want to be. But it goes way out here, wider than my pinky. As we go down, you can see wider than my pinky right in there, and then it comes back and gets real tight again. First, let's take a look at this front corner. So when we were trying to sort all this out before we fixed the door, I just tacked this little tab in to give me something to kind of hold it in place. And so I just need to relief cut that, let it settle back a little bit, and then we should be able to get it all lined up. Now, hopefully, we can move this a little. That's the panel we're trying to move. So what I'm going to do is I've got the door here, and I'm just going to take this clamp and see what it looks like. Closed it up some. I wouldn't call it perfect by any means, but that's a whole lot better than it was.
Maybe you should give him the clamps, Clamps!
Gee, you think?
Now let's go take a look. Getting a lot closer. A good rule of thumb is a paint stick. We're not there completely on the bottom, but we're a whole lot closer than we started. And as you go up, you can see it's pretty good. So I'm going to see if I can't move it in just a smidge more and close that gap.
A few moments later.
Yeah, I went back and tightened all my clamps up, and I got it a lot. I mean, not a lot, but I didn't need a lot. But if you look at that, that's the width of a paint stick, and that's exactly what we're shooting for all along there. And there'll be a little fudging here and there, but that's pretty good.
Nice.
Now that we've got the front seam very close to where it belongs, I mean, there's going to be some door adjustment and stuff, but so much better. We can start to look at this back seam. There might be quite a lot that needs to happen here. So it needs to go back out and out right here. And this needs to stay where it's at right there. Make a weird line so I know. This needs to come in the middle, and that needs to go out a little bit. So let's do that. So that's already making a big difference pushing out here. This gap isn't bad, especially right at the top. We're at, right at our stick, and at the bottom it's kind of a fat stick. So now I just need it to, the bottom needs to come out just a bit more. I'm going to essentially put a wedge in. I think this will take a little more massaging right in here to help it fit, because it's not as flat as it could be right along this edge. I wonder if I can lock this down a little bit. You see where that's sitting? Ooh, that got wide on me. Yeah, that's too. I was gonna stick this behind there like the other one, like I did on the front, but that is too wide for that. I've got a piece I tack welded along here to help me stay where I need to be, and try and get on the other side of it like that. Oh, don't do that. There. Okay, now I got it on the inside instead of the outside, which did not help my gap at all. Yay. Obviously, the more I push out, so I'm pushing out, which is pulling that gap apart. And I'm trying to not lose it too much. That's actually a pretty good gap along there. I'm going to tack the very bottom and then try and pull that forward if I can. Oh. Doesn't do any good if the welder's turned off. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but I cleaned up a ton around here. That was a goal I made over between hits in the last video, but I used one of them new brooms. I don't know if you've heard about it, but man, they're sweeping the nation. And the Saga is the door that will never heal, otherwise known as our passenger door. I'm gonna shut it real quick. I completely disconnected this whole side of the cab. And you're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I disconnected the whole side of the cab. So let me unlock it. We can just take that part off. Because remember, this whole stupid thing bolted together. None of this matters now. So this should show the problem I'm facing is, and this needs body work because that's a little too thick right there, but this should still be following it. If you go up and look, we're great. You come down and even for the first part of our skin. I don't know what has to happen here to fix this. It could be putting cab corners on before the door was straight. This could be too flat when I put this on because I was matching the old door. And so I may need to redo this whole part to get it to, actually, the more I think about it, the more I think that's probably right.
It was at this moment that he knew.
I think maybe what happened is when I put, and that might explain why this side didn't fit quite as good as the other one. What happened was when I put this together, it was for a door that didn't have that curve in it like we just fixed. So now I've got to fix that shape into this. So, yay. I do have another cab corner for this because I messed up ordering a long time ago. And I'm wondering if between the two, yeah, because that sits completely different. That's what we got to do to fix this rear gap and get everything lined up, is quite literally cut the bottom of this cab out. Oh well, it's all fun. Don't forget, pretty people need a full face shield. What I think's telling, looking at it in hindsight, of course, there's a considerable curve difference there. And I'm thinking this will really help us line up a lot better. But what I'm going to do before I do anything with this lower cab, put this where it goes. And once I have this all matched, I'll tack that in place. Then we fill this in properly because we have this actually correct. When we did it all before, I say we. I'd like to have a scapegoat, but I did it. I didn't realize this door was flattened, and it's caused all these problems over here, which sucks because you end up redoing stuff. But at the same time, you learn quite a bit about how to fix it better the next time. I mean, a lot of this is just winging it because I really don't know how it's supposed to be, but I am super pumped with the front. So on the back, we're going to try and get it to that same paint stick. But you can tell just by cutting that out, it's already matching so much better right in here. This gap was monstrous before, and just by relieving that stretch, you know, instead of it being curved like this, we stretched it, and now we've given it its curve back, and we're fitting a lot better. I mean, I hate doing the Paula Abdul 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I can't avoid it. I don't think anyone can avoid it on a project, to be quite honest with you. You know what I am going to do before I get super far down this road? Is I'm going to take and put this on here real quick. Quick like. So I've got something weird going on. It may be just in my brain, but I'm gonna mess around with this and come back and tell you what I figured out, because I don't know. So that's center between the frame. That is center on the cab. Okay, so I know the cab is square, and I also know that, but that's how far off it slid that way. That's almost an inch. I just noticed this when I was like, this line is not the same. Now the funny part is it's centered up front. I know it's square, So it's just, I must have bumped it at some point or leaned into it and not realized it. But I'm gonna have to make a couple adjustments to get it back centered and rebolted down. I did want to show this real quick just because I see a lot of higher tech solutions, a lot like lasers and all that stuff to match lines, but I don't have that stuff. I don't want to spend the money on it. My funds aren't significant enough to be able to just buy every little toy. So what I do, I mark this out. Now I just clamp this board and I just got to slide that till it lines up. We'll see if I'm man enough to do it, but beyond that, oh, maybe I'm not. I may have to get a strap. I took a ratchet strap, attached it to the wall, then I went around in here. The B pillar, I have two ratchet straps. I have one I shortened up real tight, just hooked it up, and then all I had to do was crank on it. I do this kind of stuff a lot because it gives me an extra hand. A couple straps, couple boards, and a few clamps. I've got it recentered, and I didn't have to spend any money. I just used stuff I have. After looking at this stuff, the way I originally had the cab mounting, I would like to change that to maybe be a bracket I bolt onto here and then bolt through the floor to go straight down, because it's all going to be on this plate that the roll bars too, and that was the idea, is I had it all welded to it. It was going to be directly solid, but I think I'd rather it bolt, so I'm going to change that before we fix this. So originally this plate I had made up and it bolted here, and I welded the roll bar came to here, welded the roll bar to there, and then down to the plate. I'm going to change it to be, it is just going to be a bracket here, and we're going to bolt it in the corner and call it a day. A, I want it to ride a little softer than that would make it, and B, this doesn't really need to be a full roll cage attached to the frame. I'm not racing this truck. I'm not doing anything like that. So what would make it perform like a good driver? And so that's what we're doing here. I'll have to do the same thing on the other side. So I went and grabbed all the different cab type mount things, engine mounts, whatever, that I have floating around to see if we can't come up with something that might actually work. These are actual cab mounts for an S10, but I'm hoping maybe we can do something with these to remake our cab corner. They're polyurethane. They would have to sit down quite a bit. They could work though. There's room for that. Make a ledge here. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. So I'm thinking if you had some sort of a ledge, so you'd have some sort of plate. Ow, that's my finger. Basically, you would just have that. So I did some more digging, and I actually found, I thought I had them somewhere, but this is the original S10 mount. So to show how this works, maybe. So you have this, actually, this piece here would sit like that, like a cup to hold it in place. Then you have this guy, which slides over it. And then you have, it doesn't have to be this, holds it like savvy. And then your bottom one goes on like that, put there, and then a bolt through the middle, and it would sit about like that. I do have at least two of these, so that would do the rear. I don't have enough room for that up front anyway, so, but I think I can cut this up and make a plate out of it and then brace it and have something we can bolt together. Yeah, and then we can put a captive nut right there. See if we can't do something with that. Not super square, but square enough. Now I'm going to put it back together and try and ballpark. Oop, that's upside down. Rounded edge goes in the cup. Figure out where that's going to fit. We can mark it and work on that. I tried turning on a little more light in there, see if that would help. Now let's see how close we are. Normally you would put these on before you'd set the cab on, but I don't want to pick the cab up and do all that since I already did all the work to center it. I'm just going to put the top one in, slide that in, pivot it up a little bit, find the other bolt, and oh, come on. Slide it through. I'm tightening these up because I'm getting ready to figure out where my bolt hole goes. A little fatter pencil to try and make it, although I see a pretty good problem right now. Hooray! Too long of a fatter pencil.
That's what she said. Pam?
My mother's coming.
That's what she said. No.
Fixed it! This is the part that they don't tell you about when you make a bunch of stuff. And you put it together 9 million times trying to figure it out. Haha, we have a spot. Hooray. Now we got to find a bolt and a nut that are the right length. Okay, one trip to the hardware store later, we have formulated a plan. So what I'm going to do, and we may have to work on that, but to give us a mount for the bottom side, we're going to weld that in and then weld around that to give me a nice surface area. Now the issue we're going to have with using this is we need to reduce the height here by the thickness of this washer. Otherwise it'll raise the cab by that. The idea is that we'll take this, so the floor of the cab is here. I'm going to weld this to the bottom and then, well, I'll actually weld this nut in and then weld that in place. And we got a bolt that's the exact length to come right up through there. So that'll give me a nice contact patch for everything to be mounted to on the bottom of the cab. Make it secure, be safe. I got to get this zinc coating off of there, but then we can weld it up and that'll give us a mount. I use the other washers and a little bit of sheet metal to space everything up, and I'll weld it from the back and then grind it down. Getting somewhat smarter, not all the way though. Bracket thing. That's gravity tested twice. Yay, the bolt still goes in. So I found a bolt that would not quite go all the way through because it's going to sit down in there, and that way we can be flush on the bottom and work like that. Now I'm going to mock this up on the cab, figure out where this is supposed to be tacked. As you notice, I broke the tacks. Oh, there we go. Probably the smart thing to do would be to tack that on and then bolt it. In the armpit! Wah! I will not lie to you and say that that is super pretty, but it is definitely welded. Ground down flush. It's welded fully. You can see we got good penetration on our thick plate, because that's on the plate that the roll bar is welded to. And that should be good enough. Now we just need it to, well, honestly, cool down. Cool and pretty well done. I'm going to go ahead and put a coat of primer over that real quick just to kind of protect it. We can see if we did this halfway right. The cup, I believe, is hitting the top of our bracket here. Just enough to make the bolt not want to go. We're going to take that off and cut that spot off, give us some room, see if that fixes it all. Because, you know, science. I don't know if you know this, but I learned the other day why hummingbirds hum. I thought it was kind of neat, but apparently they don't know the words to any of the songs. But, you know, there you go. If you think that one's bad, I got another one. What do you call a sleepwalking nun? A Roman Catholic. I like that one a lot. Okay, so I trimmed the top, and now what I'm doing is just putting this in hand tight for now. And now I can run up these guys where they're gonna end up going. And then that'll make it to where we can tack it. So we've got, I welded this solid, and I ground the backside so they would sit flush, obviously. So I'm gonna run this all the way up and get it tight, and then bolt it down. And then in theory, especially once the frame's all painted and all that stuff, this would be fine. Now I'm gonna gusset this back edge of the mount, but I wanted to get it all on here first before gusseting, just to make sure everything worked after welding. Just wanted to give you a little update. I'm not going to show the whole process of the, it's still hot,
Is because you're a dumbass.
The whole process of making the driver's side bracket. It's the exact same thing we did before, but I've got it welded up. I do want to gusset them somehow, and I've got a couple different shapes of some real heavy metal I've thought about putting on, but honestly, I think I'm just going to leave them like this for now. And after I get everything finalized and I see what kind of space I actually have, then I'm going to come in and make a permanent gusset. It won't hurt it right now to not have it because we're not putting any loads on it. We're not doing anything crazy. But obviously before we would drive it or do anything like that, we need some more strength to it. But this will keep it in place, and then we'll figure out the gussets for both sides when we have more of the stuff in place. So before that whole debacle with the cab mount, which I'm really liking that, we were trying to ascertain where this should be. The rocker panel, I need to put it on to figure out where the cab corner is supposed to end up being height-wise. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the gap and the distance out before I even try and put that cab corner. I got the rocker panel balanced on there. So now, ta-da! So that didn't move, and now we have that gap. I mean, it needs work. Please don't judge it. But now we have that. All we need to do, besides burn our damn hand,
Is because you're a dumbass.
I am so tired of this side of the truck. So I think we're going to call that an episode. I know we started out trying to fix this door gap and ended up making 2 new rear cab mounts, but it just needed to be done. I am excited that we switched from a more aggressive and a hard riding roll cage mounted to frame to a more traditional with a polyurethane bushings that it'll ride nicer. I think that'll be better. But more importantly, I think it gives us a locked in part to just keep finalizing everything on this truck as we move forward to finish it and eventually maybe someday drive it. But if you've enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, consider subscribing. I also try and post a little bit on Instagram. It's UpwardPenny, all lowercase over there. And until the next time, we're just going to keep plugging away.